tavern was the triple the adventurer had been seeking.
The fate of the world hangs in the balance. Don't look down.
The hero fought their way to the top. The warband looked to their hero for inspiration.
Trust was your failure.
You can find friends in the most unusual places.
Quilled in B minor.
The victorious hero seemed undefeatable.
I didn't do it! I swear! I didn't do it! I swear!
It's Taylor's oldest time.
I will devour the world.
A facet for every kill. fate of the world hangs in the balance.
This recruit would go on to do great things.
Safety restrictions offline. Harvesting service engaged.
All the townsfolk rejoiced. Once upon a time, in a battle-scarred land.
Mayday!
The brave hero boldly marched to battle. And so, the hero vanquished their foe.
Mayday!
For great advice about digital technology, head for Circuit City.
Victorious
If you're looking
hero
for a
seemed
DVD player,
undefeatable.
make sure you choose one with DivX. Only DVD players with DivX play both DVD and DivX movie discs. DivX lets you watch movies at home for about what it costs to rent, but you never have to return movies or pay late fees. This RCA DVD player with DivX is only $349.99. And get any 5 DivX movies
So,
free after
the
rebate.
hero
Plug into
vanquished
DivX
their
at
foe.
Circuit City.
Recently, I did a documentary regarding the fall of Circuit City, and in it, I didn't mention one element of, well, their business. DivX. Now, what the heck is a DivX? Well, to begin with, it should not be confused with the video codec DivX, which is a newer thing and has absolutely nothing to do with the DivX we're talking about, which means Digital Video Express. It was a digital video format, not a codec. And Circuit City was involved in the development. The reason I didn't bring it up during the documentary is that while many claim that DivX was the reason Circuit City went under, it really wasn't. It didn't help, of course, but the whole DivX debacle happened during the late 90s when Circuit City was still doing alright. Their fall was mostly to do with, well, everything else I
mighty
mentioned.
warband
Seizing the sale of
trusted them
appliances,
and
changing their
that
pay
gave
structure
them
and angering their
strength.
employees, reducing pay, and generally doing everything wrong. DivX proved to be a poor investment, but it really wasn't what killed them. Though, on its own, it is a very interesting story. And I felt it deserved its own video, especially since there's actually a lot of misinformation about what DivX even was, and what it was meant to do. See, a lot of people claim that DivX was meant to be a competitor to DVDs, which were brand new in the late 90s, meant to replace VHS, which everyone had been using and enjoying, actually. VHS is great, but with the modern digital age and the idea of discs, well, DVD came into the picture. And I'm sure pretty much everyone watching this knows what a DVD is. DivX was not supposed to be a competitor to the DVD format. While they both used discs, what it was supposed to be was a variation on the rental format. In the late 90s, renting movies, and games actually, was still very popular. It was still a thing. The internet was still in its infancy, and streaming hadn't yet come into full. Companies like Blockbuster were still doing pretty well, all things considered, and were slowly introducing the new DVD format. But DivX was meant to be kind of a bypass for the whole video rental store element. But it also wasn't like streaming either. It was... Well, let me explain how this worked. DivX was a digital video format in which the customer would buy a disc. Magical, I know. You probably couldn't see that coming. But the discs would cost only only about $4.50,
The hero wore the crown,
which sounds like a
but
really
others planned
great
to
deal
take it
for a
from him.
movie. I mean, even bargain bins are sometimes more expensive than that. How were they able to sell DivX for so cheap? Well, it was because DivX would use specialized DivX players,
The
and the
villain was
discs in
defeated,
question,
but
once you
peace
watched
had
it
not
once,
been
were
achieved.
only able to be re-watched for 48 hours after that. Once that period ended, you could no longer watch the disc, though you could pay a continuation fee to play it for another 48 hours, or you could upgrade it to watch it an unlimited number of times with a different fee, turning it into a DivX Silver disc. There were also supposed to be DivX Gold discs that were, by default, allowed to be played an unlimited number of times, just like regular DVDs. Now, I'm sure many of you are seeing the problems with this already, but it does have some benefits here because the whole point was that you wouldn't need to go to a rental store, or more intrinsically, take the video back. DivX was considered a version of the rental format in which you wouldn't need to return the movie you had rented. Once the disc was done, you'd either pay to renew it, turn it into a permanent disc if you really like the movie, or if you have no interest in rewatching it, just throw it away. It was kind of interesting, but it has a lot of problems. Because I bet you're wondering, how in the world are they even keeping track of these discs? How do they know that they've been played once? Well, that's a combination of a few things, partially to do with the players themselves, which again, were specialized for DivX. Each disc was marked with a unique barcode that could be read by the player. The status of each disc, in terms of how often they've been played, was monitored through an
Surely
account
the hero
over a
would be
phone
an
line.
honorable
Not
ruler.
internet. No. Phone line. Owners of the DivX platform had to set up an account in which additional viewing fees would be charged, since obviously they were paying to buy them in the first place in the store. Or should I say, rent the disc in the first place? I don't know, this is weird. But where the disc player came in is that it itself would actually call an account server over the phone line to charge for viewing fees. So, technically speaking, you could do everything you needed to do from the player, and it would take care of that for you. Each disc had the rather typical CSS encryption, content scramble system, but in addition to that, DivX also had triple TES encryption, which is a symmetric key block cipher. They also used an alternative channel modulation coding scheme, and this prevented those discs from being read in standard DVD players. If you put a DivX disc in a standard DVD player, it would not work at all. So you needed a specialized DivX player. In those players, they would have additional security IC chips. And all of this sounds like a lot of security and lockdowns and data tracking and things like that. And yeah, it was. At face value, it's an alternative to renting, sure, but this all sounds like a bit of a pain in the butt when compared to just buying the DVD. But it had a surprising amount of backing, particularly movie studios, since this was believed to be able to prevent a lot of piracy that they didn't like very much. DivX as a format had been in development since 1995, under the codename Zoom TV. And the whole thing was a partnership between Circuit City as well as an entertainment law firm, Zifrin, Brittingham, Branca, and Fisher. Circuit City themselves would invest $100 million into ZBB&F. The product was first showed off at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas in January of 1998. Though it didn't attract much attention at the time, it did catch the eye of 20th Century Fox. They, on February 20th, 1998, signed a deal to release their titles on the board. There were several delays to get the whole thing up and running since this was new territory, but DivX had its first trial run in the San Francisco, California, and Richmond, Virginia areas, beginning on June 8, 1998. And the nationwide rollout began 3 months after that, September 21st. But at the time, there was only one player available that handled DivX, made by Zenith, but they did have 150 titles available. And some say that Circuit City sold DivX only through them. They wouldn't allow anyone else to sell it. And that's not true at all. That would be an incredibly stupid thing to do, which, okay, I concede that Circuit City made a lot of stupid decisions, but this wasn't one of them. Now, by the end of things, Circuit City was the only one selling DivX, but that was only because everyone else had pulled out. At first, DivX was sold primarily through Circuit City, yes, but also Good Guys and Ultimate Electronics retailers. Promotion of DivX pushed it as an alternative to rental, with the promise of no returns and no late fees, since, well, what are you late about? You didn't have to take it back. And even though part of the DivX format was that they could just toss the disc if they didn't want to renew it, a lot of the retailers did have DivX recycling bins on their premises, because, well, it was a good look. By September 22nd, another retailer, the Canadian Future Shop, signed a contract to stock the format. And over the following months, 3 more players would be introduced to market. An RCA, a ProScan, and a Panasonic. DivX only ever had 4 players that were compatible with it,
then the frog
just to be clear.
transformed
And the overall
into a
national
handsome
debut happened on
prince.
October 12th, 1998. A big marketing push happened in November because, well, it was the holiday season. This was the time to really test the mettle of the format, to see if there really was a place in the market, and it was genuinely believed that people were gonna want this, that the public would love it. Yes! No more returns, no more late fees, we can just throw our discs out willy-nilly and have them fill up the landfills like crazy. Yeah, it'll be fine. And they even got a boon in the middle of December because there was a shortage of DVD
hero
players.
fought their
During the
way
final
to the
quarter of
top.
1998, 87,000 DivX players were sold, with over 500,000 discs being sold. However, it's probably worth mentioning that despite those numbers, only 17,000 accounts
The
for
villain
DivX
was
were actually
defeated,
created.
but peace had not been
Interesting.
achieved.
One of the big early problems is that because they thought demand for DivX was going to be so high that everyone just had to get a hold of it, they decided it was a really great decision to sell the players for DivX at a price that was twice as much as regular DVD players. And they must have realized they screwed up here because they started reducing the price within just a few months of initial release. But that wasn't even really the major issue, as once DivX was first announced, there was deep-seated opposition on a lot of different fronts, especially on the internet. Yeah, the internet in the late 90s, which looked like this. It was still very much the early days, but message boards did exist, particularly ones about the home theater where people could go and talk about movies and stuff like that. But there were a lot of people that really didn't like the idea of DivX, as, for one thing, they felt it threatened DVD, which they thought was the future, and
All
DivX
for
would
one
get in the
and
way of
one
that,
for all,
which
they
is kind of a
chanted.
silly thing to say, because it was never meant to compete with DVD, rather complemented in the rental format, but regardless, there were also environmental concerns, because, well, like I said, once you were done with the disc and you didn't want to renew it, you just tossed it. And that would be a lot more discs filled into landfills that couldn't even be reused at all, whereas in a more traditional rental model, you take the movie back, so the next person will be able to watch it from that same disc. You weren't throwing away anything. The creators of the DVD format, Sony and Toshiba, also denounced it, and even a major studio distributor,
This
Warner
is
Home
a
Video,
dead end.
didn't like it at all. It probably didn't help that a lot of the DivX titles were actually inferior to their DVD counterparts. Now, the reason for this is they were kind of lazily put on the disc in the first place. They utilized pan and scan format, which is a method of adjusting widescreen film images so that they can be shown in full screen proportions of standard definition. This generally results in them cropping off the sides of the original widescreen image, which can sometimes ruin certain scenes of movies depending. And DivX almost never had any kind of bonus features, maybe a trailer,
hero
but that was
fought
it.
their way to the
Whereas if
top.
you've ever watched a DVD or a Blu-ray in the modern day, you know there's often plenty of bonus features. Deleted scenes, interviews, things like that. DivX never had anything like that. Some others were also worried that a lot of studios would release their content exclusively on DivX, not even giving DVD a chance. And to a degree, that did kind of happen. DreamWorks, 20th Century Fox, and Paramount did initially exclusively release some of their films on DivX. Though, in fairness, DivX never asked them to. That was not part of the arrangement. This wasn't intentional. But still more just really didn't even like it as a concept. Like the idea that you have a disc, have something on the disc, a movie in this case, and all of a sudden, oh
Tale us
no,
all this
the
time.
data's there, we're not going to show it to you. I'm afraid I can't let you do that, Dave. Like, it just kind of came off as scummy, even though in the technical sense that wasn't any different from renting a movie, but at least there, like, you could absorb a late fee if you wanted to keep it. You weren't arbitrarily shut out of watching the film you had rented, you know? And as you can imagine, many of the rental establishments, like Hollywood Video, didn't like DivX either. Nor did Blockbuster, because it was a direct competitor to them in this instance. And mind you, those establishments would never actually sell DivX at any point, because, well, why the heck would they? That would make no sense for them at all. Plus, you have to consider the fact that this thing is calling on your phone line, and many felt that it would clog up the lines if it was being used too much. Though, in fairness, that never really was a concern, because in actuality, the DivX player only utilized the line twice a month to verify the data it had been collecting. Once that was taken care of, it didn't use the phone line at all. But it did have to be plugged into it. And, well, I don't know about you guys, but back in the 90s when we all used landlines and we had to plug things in
The
with a
battlegrounds
wire,
forged the weak
my
minions
house's
into
phone line was like
soldiers.
nowhere near where the TV was. I mean, I'm sure that varies per house, but I mean, in some instances, you're going to be using a really long wire to try to plug the stupid thing into your phone line. Also, you need your phone line for, like, your phone. And in those days, the internet. Like, did you even think about this at all? But when I buy a cheaper DVD player, not only can I rent movies from other stores, but also it doesn't arbitrarily lock me out of them, and I just have to plug it into the
hero
wall
wore the crown,
and the TV.
but
But my
others
point is
tried
that
to
this
take
is
it
not
from him.
easier at any point. Stop lying to me. And when you're keeping track of what you were watching, a lot of you were concerned that this whole thing might be used to spy on people's watching habits, or perhaps utilize that data to, like, target ads or something, which... What? No! Companies would never utilize our data to why? That's ridiculous! Don't be silly! It's not believed DivX ever did anything like that, but to be fair, they never actually had a chance to, because it didn't last long. The whole thing fell apart pretty much immediately, like literally within a year. It was an embarrassing flop. Just after the launch, Circuit City did announce that they had a gain of 4.1% in net profit, which is great, but there were a ton of other expenses they had to worry about that were associated with the launch, marketing and things like that. Because of this, that profit they saw was significantly undercut. Though at first it seemed like they might succeed, sort of. Just after the holiday season, they were pretty stable. The market share that they had was 23% in January of 1999, and they even teamed up with Thompson to start working on a high-definition video format,
villain was
predating both
defeated,
Blu-ray
but
and HD
peace had
DVD by
not
several
been achieved.
years, which might have been interesting to see, but that whole thing would be canceled because DivX would wind up being canceled. Though they had 419 titles available in the format by March, sales were suffering a sharp decline. By spring, all three of the third-party retailers pulled out, not believing the format was sustainable or worth it at all.
So anyway,
This is how Circuit City wound up being the only retailer selling DivX. It was not an intentional choice in any way. No one else wanted to sell it. And by May, even studios were starting to pull out. Despite initially having a lot of confidence in DivX because of the advanced security features that would help prevent piracy in their eyes,
It all
it just
started
wasn't
with a
selling.
little minion.
Paramount actually refused to convert their titles to silver discs, which is pretty obnoxious since a lot of people, like the fact that you could keep the movie if you wanted to, and Paramount was like, no, we're not letting you do that. Why would you want to do that? Why are you enjoying our movies so much? Why do you want to keep our movies to watch later? How dare you have fun? And in the background, other companies like Disney were starting to really push and bulk up their DVD library. By the first anniversary of DivX, they still only had 5 compatible DivX players, and not a single compatible DivX computer drive. They had 478 titles, and only Circuit City sold them. Because of all this, they discontinued the thing on June 16th, 1999. The fact was, the general public's response to DivX was the opposite of what anyone thought. They genuinely believed that people would love it because it would make rental easier. But what they didn't anticipate was
All the
people's
townsfolk
aversion,
rejoiced.
especially back then, to, well, intrusive kind of Big Brother tactic.
hyper-conservative, bigotry, vitriol, prejudice, hatred.
Amandla Stanberg there, thinking if you throw out more descriptors, it makes the insult more powerful. But I think this is an interesting video, not just because it tells you a lot about Amandla's mental state, but also because I think it answers the never-ending question of why. At least in her case. For a long time, studios have come out and attacked the fans, but this seems to be off her own back. As Season 2 got cancelled, sources were coming out and talking about Amandla's diss track that she released on social media, saying it was an easy target and it hurt the public perception of the show. That doesn't make it sound as if it's something that Disney wanted to happen. No, instead it sounds more like the action of somebody which has been doing this for their entire career, a true believer.
And I think about how it's positioning blackness, positioning womanhood.
Who just can't help themselves.
Because I am black and gay and a woman, there are aspects of identity that have been traditionally, historically persecuted.
Whoever convince everybody else in their story controls power.
But attack the very people they need to have a career. Well, at least under normal circumstances. If you're getting hired not because you'll make the company money, but because you tick a box for them, you know, maybe they really want somebody in the crew who's Danish. Then they won't care if the audience despises you. Well, not until you release a diss track for their $180 million show and contribute to it getting cancelled. Either way,
it's like this interesting balance of the personal as political.
I take responsibility.
But after that, as an actress, you'd think you'd learn. You'd think you'd maybe start to appreciate the audience that didn't watch the show.
And are we the baddies?
Maybe you should start to appeal to them, change yourself, your values, and how you talk in interviews to get them on board. Or you could just rampantly insult them in a video on your Instagram and see how that goes for you.
Bigotry, vitriol, prejudice.
That's how we end up here.
I thought I would get on here, be candidly. I hate doing it.
Don't do it. I mean, it's not as if you have time to do it. You seem incredibly busy. You can't even be bothered to give your audience your undivided attention. No, I'm just gonna do this. Is this how the Acolyte script got written? I'm just cooking the tea while noting it down. Maybe you're great at multitasking, or maybe if you focused on one thing at a time, it'd turn out better.
I hate doing this, but I'm gonna do it.
Yeah. Does that sound like something that Disney has told them to do? Or is it more, I know this is a bad idea, but I'm gonna do it anyway because I can't stop myself?
I don't use social media very much anymore.
I guess when you have opinions that only appeal to a minuscule amount of human beings, getting told the truth would mean you don't use social media very much anymore.
I'm so happy about that.
So is everybody else, love. Believe that. This is like when Dustborn came out and started threatening to kick people out of their community, and everyone was like, what community? You didn't have to release this diatribe as a tweet to the world. 9.6 million people saw it. They don't care. You had 31 people playing in your community. You could have just DM'd them. It's like that with this video. You didn't actually need to release this on Instagram. You could have just said it into the mirror. You still would have told everybody that gave a But she says there's many people that she wants to show love and support for and she actually likes, and so that's why she's making this video. It's weird how that comes at the end of the video and almost like an afterthought. I think what you have here is the good old poison sandwich. It's like we're going to compliment people up front, put the poison in the middle, and then compliment people at the end. Like, why did you release a video to attack the fans? I didn't! It was complimentary! Except for that bit about the bigots.
Our server show has been canceled.
Everybody knows. You've got two groups of people watching. Either the people you're insulting, or the 5 people that like it. And believe me, those 5 people have already been tweeting about it anyway. And they started a petition. I mean, so far it's crossed 40,000 signatures. 63,000 now. Loads of people want Disney to waste another $180 million and make everyone piss themselves laughing. This is wonderful. Or anyone else. There are aliens in remote parts of the galaxy that could have predicted this. So I don't know what Star Wars is. Can you describe what it's about? Well, it's about a lot of whip. Yeah, no, that's enough. That's all the information I need to know. You've been beaming signals about Hollywood into space for years. We've seen enough.
Of course, I live in the bubble of my own reality.
I do like that comment. Of course I live in the bubble of my own reality. Sorry? You say that as if that's normal. It's obviously normal for you. That's why you say it that way.
Of course I live in the bubble.
It's not normal for normal people. I don't live in a bubble of my own reality. I don't live in my own reality. I live in reality. I can also understand other people's perspectives. I can put myself in their position. This means I don't live in a bubble. If somebody disagrees with me, I can often see where they're coming from, whether I think it's nonsense or not. It's not the case here, is it? The way she describes living in a bubble of her own reality reminds me of the ending of Men in Black. not even that she just has her own opinion. She's describing it as if she lives in her own pocket universe and presumably thinks everybody else does as well. They don't share anything between them. They are entirely separated, and that implies you can't see from their point of view. If I had to guess, quite a lot of trouble abstracting. Not really an ideas person, as that is how you end up in a bubble of your own reality, because then you can only interpret everything, including other people's opinions, from your own perspective. And so you interpret what they're saying through how you are. And there's more evidence that she thinks this way. I mean, if you all remember the famous interview,
this is, I would say, arguably the gayest Star Wars.
Just listen to how she talks in that interview.
Nerds are gay. In my world, nerds are gay.
It's in my world. To me, as if her opinion actually shapes reality, because if you can't abstract, you can't understand reality and other people's opinions, so your opinion literally changes reality. In my world, which is separate than yours, distinct. I live in a different universe. And once you notice this about people, you see it everywhere. It explains a lot, including the rest of this video. That's why I think this,
Of course, I live in the bubble of my own reality.
is a very enlightening sentence, as it just kind of, it rolls off the top. Of course, don't we all? I mean, I do, so you all must.
A rampage.
I love a rampage. I made a lot of videos about the Acolytes. I wouldn't describe any of them as being on a rampage. Being English, I genuinely don't think that I could summon that much enthusiasm to rampage. I'm not sure it's biologically possible.
A rampage of vitriol.
Do you think vitriol is a word she uses on a regular basis?
Vitriol. Vitriol. Vitriol.
Do you think she could actually define it if you ask? Just so we're on the same page. Vitriol would be bitter criticism or malice, both of which would imply the criticism wasn't genuine or deserved. No, either you're maliciously doing something because you're evil and you want it to fail, or you're bitter about it. For some reason, maybe you're envious of its success. You're insecure about your own life. But the world itself implies it's not criticism. The show isn't bad. It wasn't deserved. It's not my fault. It's a problem with them.
Since the show was even announced, and it's still just a concept.
It's not when it was a concept, it was when you were talking about it, dear.
Something that, like, my parents would have allowed me to see when I was younger as a queer person.
Gotcha.
But I would have been able to understand as a queer person.
The Acolyte will be Frozen meets Kill Bill meets The Mandalorian, similar to Andor, Disney Star Wars Watchmen.
The combination of Frozen and Kill Bill, which is kind of a nuts combo.
Villainess, actually being a powerful, misunderstood woman. It was hitting me on such a deep level.
Kathy gets a lot of shit online.
Yeah.
But I know that she was the one who made this show.
Oh, 100%.
How much of that Star Wars fan fiction that she used to write do you think ended up in the show?
All of it, for sure. I did do a couple of, like, RPG campaigns on Zoom. There were a couple of characters from those campaigns that may or may not be in the shows.
Well, then again, I've already implied you couldn't understand concepts. Now, the problem people had when they found out about the show is what you said about it.
The best parts about Star Wars is that there is no good or evil. It depends on what side you're standing on.
Well, Anakin just killed a whole Death Star. How many people died on that?
Or later on, what you were telling people about the show in the interviews before it was released.
People have told me that it's the gayest Star Wars, and I frankly...
You're offended?
Into it.
Just a concept, and no one had even seen it.
You don't need to see a show in order to judge the marketing. If I see a trailer, I can judge the trailer. If you do an interview about something, I can judge the interview. I can actually get all the evidence of all the things that you have actually told me about the show and believe you. Imagine that. I can believe what you're marketing the show as. And from that, make a decision about whether I want to see it or not. You've been in this industry since you were 4 and don't seem to understand the purpose of marketing. But then again, you made this video, so I think we could have gathered that anyway. Describe what it is so they can judge it and determine whether it's worth their money and time. It's your duty to convince them that you are worth it. How do you think that's going for you here?
Experiencing a rampage, hyper-conservative, bigotry, vitriol, prejudice, hatred, hateful language.
Very poor grasp of the English language here. Just adding more words doesn't increase the strength of your language. If you're going to insult someone, keep it short, because it's just generally more impactful.
You started at the ripe old age of 4 doing Disney commercials. How have you managed to handle all of that kind of comes with it?
It's been very painful for me.
I wish that we had a little warning before that happens.
But also, what she said, it was categories. They were meaningless words that didn't describe anything. They were just categorizing statements.
Hyper-conservative, bigotry, vitriol, prejudice, hatred, hateful language.
And of course, she does none of the work to explain why any of these things are bad, for example. Oh, you hate things! Hating murderers would be very good for your health. And bigotry is just an attachment to a belief. Yes, but if your belief is correct, then you want to be attached to it. There's nothing objectively good around tolerance or open-mindedness. In fact, what you want is a closed mind around the correct ideas. That way you can't be led astray by things like evil people. The funniest thing is she's just categorizing things and expecting the implication to be that they're bad, while expecting you to do all of the work to work out why they're bad. You can't expect anything like her to justify herself or the unreasonable attachments she has to beliefs.
Bigotry.
Of course, none of this will have crossed her mind. To her, bigotry, I win now. Why would you require things such as evidence to change your opinion? Don't you know you should just agree with
I say this. Oh, of course, it's not that. What it really is it's us alt-right influencers that are manipulating the masses because people can't think for themselves, and obviously they would like this game if we said it was good. That's it! Of course! Okay, let's dive into this video. So that Park Place covers this thing. Dustborn developer Red Thread Games claims response to game has been drowned out by a tidal wave of hate and abuse. Okay, response to game. I mean, hardly anybody even played it, bro. So let's be real. So Red Thread Games, the developer of...
Imagine my shock. That, let me just say it because I'm sure there's gonna be angry people typing in the comments, well, Sweet Baby Inc. didn't destroy it, they didn't do it, this was on their own fault because the server issues and all these other problems when it launched, and yeah, I get it, there were other reasons too, but Sweet Baby Inc. certainly wasn't helping them. 33 team members hard, leading to significant layoffs throughout the entire company. According to info from Eurogamer, the studio's quality assurance department had been hit particularly hard, with the team being about halved over the past month. Originally consisting of 33 team members, the department now has only 15 remaining. And the disappointing sales numbers and just people online together trying to play it have been so paltry, so pathetic, that they are directly linked to this restructuring effort. And to be honest, looking at these DLC outfits, one can't help but wonder why. The modern audience continues to impress us with their consistency of not showing up to support the games that are clearly being made for them. But the layoffs haven't been limited to just QA. Employees across various departments have been impacted, including at least one staff member who was informed of their redundancy while on paternity leave. Which, yikes, like, I don't know about the legal ramifications of that, if you can even do that, but I guess desperate times call for desperate measures, and the studio is being gutted right now. Multiple staff members who reportedly spoke with Eurogamer under the conditions of anonymity expressed concerns about the aftermath of these job cuts. With many of the roles lost, including several team members with specialized knowledge, the remaining employees are expected to now shoulder significantly more work without knowing exactly what the other people did now that they're gone. There's also an acknowledgement from senior management that the product quality will most likely suffer as a result of these cuts, which I guess is to be expected. When you're gutting a company, you're gonna let go of some good talent. But they're replacing it with people that don't know what the other people did and how they did it, so I'm not sure how they're supposed to be able to update Suicide Squad with any real tangible updates and DLC if they got rid of the people that know how to do that stuff. Because people affected by the layoffs are not just junior staff. According to Eurogamer, more experienced team members who have been with Rocksteady for over 5 years have been let go. And obviously, being in a company that is currently being gutted right now, you can't help but wonder the people that are still there, how much confidence they have in their organization to pay them moving forward. And this news comes off the heels of a very difficult time for Warner Brothers, who reported a 41% decline in gaming revenue year over year, attributing most of that drop to weak performance from Suicide Squad. The company previously disclosed losses of $200 million. $200 million from Suicide Squad. This is one of the biggest massive losses in gaming history. I feel like I'm saying that with every video these days. That's not good. Despite the setbacks, work on the game's post-launch content had been continuing, but there's no word on what, if anything, comes out next from the studio. And going through the reviews of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, many of the people who played it said that Rocksteady had a tremendous amount of talent, and it was evident while playing Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, but unfortunately, it couldn't overcome any of the terrible decisions they encountered throughout their playthroughs. They highlight the mismatch between the game's development team's skill and the poor reception of the final product received. Which gets me into the next topic. Sweet Baby Inc. being involved in this. And wouldn't you know it, they're the same people that seem to destroy every company they touch. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League was yet another project touched by Sweet Baby Inc. through one of their infamous consultation partnerships. And like everything they get their hands on, it turned to absolute shit. If it happened one time, I get it, it's a one-off. Multiple times, okay, that's kind of just bad luck. If it happens pretty much every time, or seemingly every single time that Sweet Baby Inc. is involved with it, you gotta take a step back from this and wonder about the bigger picture. Why would any company in their right mind bother signing on with them? And only a couple of things come to mind. One, the ESG score needs to get raised up, and you want that investment money from BlackRock and Vanguard, and you don't really care about the sales, even though you know it's going to tank them, and you hope that maybe people don't notice. You make the money on both ends, but either way, at least you're making money on one side of things and pretending like you actually care about everything, when in reality, we all know it's about the money. Or two, you feel threatened by Sweet Baby Inc. They scare you. They make you feel like they are an organized mafia, that if you do not utilize them, you will therefore be canceled by the nose ring mafia. Akin to what many are speculating tried to happen with Black Myth Wukong, when Rebecca Valentine from IGN made up this whole story with Ki Hoon Chan, saying that it was a misogynistic, terrible sexual workplace that was just horrible against women and all these terrible things, when it turned out that it was seemingly purposefully mistranslated to push an agenda. And you put two and two together and you gotta wonder, is this what other companies were dealing with all this time? Worried that Sweet Baby Inc. would go and destroy their game if they didn't sign on with them. Either way, it's an atrocious infestation in the entire video game industry, slowly eating it from the inside out, destroying it, all thanks to this DEI agenda-pushing narrative that if you do not sign on with them, you are somehow now the bad guy, because reasons. And like I said on the open of this, admittedly, it's not just Sweet Baby Inc. that's solely responsible for the catastrophic failure of this game, but their involvement certainly didn't help Rocksteady at all here, especially with that unnecessary DEI injection that continues to alienate any actual gamers that just want to simply play a game and not have a lecture on humanity and cultural diversity and why we need to be accepting of the other ways of life. And holy crap, can I just play a game without having some sort of sexuality injected in it? I don't care!
Black Myth Wukong is a threat to the AAA Western gaming industry, an industry that hates its audience so much that it spends 8 years making a game that can't outperform Gollum. A threat to Screen Rant in particular, taking points off the game for lacking inclusion and diversity. But how the hell do I take that sentence seriously when there is a picture of a magic monkey fighting a magic rock 3 lines above it? Hell, 90% of the things in this game aren't even human. I don't even know what this means. There is a man that can sing and play guitar without a head. What do you want, a mariachi band instead? So Confucius. And Black Myth Wukong is a threat to the American education system, as many Americans are finding out just how many Chinese people there really are. Get over here. Let me show you some numbers. The USA has 333 million people. China has 1.4 billion. So when you see the player chart full of Helldivers 2 every day at high noon, and when you see English doesn't even make up 10% of the total reviews, remember that China outfucked us by 1 billion people, and they just got a second game to add to their library for when they're not playing PUBG. But with all that being said, how's the game? It's janky as hell, but it's also a good time. Let's quit jibber-jabbering and get into it. This game takes place in China or India. I don't know. This game is based on Journey to the West, which I've been told is like the Harry Potter of China. So out of respect for China and in a desperate attempt to improve my rapidly declining social credit score, I've turned all the dialogue to Chinese and I have shut off the subtitles. That one's for you, Big Winnie! However, unfortunately, that meant I didn't get a single word of the story, so don't expect any lore-accurate information from here onward. That's it on the story. Let's talk about how this game plays. First of all, this game is a boss rush. You're a monkey with a stick and they're throwing boss after boss after boss at your stick, and your goal is to use that stick to beat down every last one of them. Most bosses get no context, no cutscenes, no fanfare. They just get a name tag so you know what to write on their gravestone after you kill them. As for the difficulty of these bosses, some of these bosses feel like a parody of a Dark Souls boss. Look at Blazing you just coming in spikes out of the ground to calling in Rodney the Roach to hide behind an invisible wall, throwing attacks through it, to throwing an attack that hangs like a constipated shit, to getting body slammed by a tornado that they just spawned in. Don't forget about the grapples. I find the most effective strat to counter these is Alt F4. When I fight bosses like this, I say, put me out to pasture. Just give me some jello and plop this old dog in front of a tube TV that's playing Frasier reruns. Much like the gameplay, my dementia is too advanced. But most bosses are piss easy. Like, look at this stupid tiger. Watch how easy this is for me. I believe it was Confucius that once said, an oppressive government is more to be feared than a tiger. Oh God, the tiger is so much worse. Save me, oppressive government. Save me. Hang on. Confucius says some wild shit. Many people compare this game to Dark Souls, and I can definitely see it in some ways. But my only problem with that comparison is that you wouldn't believe how horribly you can play this game and still succeed. I have so many boss fights where I accidentally beat them while throwing down some of the worst combos you've ever seen. I'm talking horrible, truly appalling gameplay. Like someone just handed a stroke victim a controller 5 seconds after it happened. That's what I'm talking about. And yet, here I am, failing forward. Get over here. You see that boss? My aura just killed him. I did not beat these bosses by learning their mechanics. I did not improve myself, look up guides, overcome them with skill. I wallowed in self-pity until my